Hi, my name is Nils Naujoks and I'm a professional sim racer for G2 Esports. Overall, there's huge debate in sim racing whether or not hardware can make you faster. I don't think in particular if you have the talent, the hardware will make you shine or put you at the back of the field. In the past 2 decades, sim racing equipment has made a major leap. Of course, we were taking deeper takes onto pedals, racing wheels, PCs, and of course monitors as well. In particular, the monitor in sim racing is like one of the few connections you have to the car. Everything is perceived visually in the first place, and therefore it's really important to have high frame rates, low response rates of the monitor, because this gives you a competitive advantage in the end and makes it easier for you to perceive what the car is doing.
Hey, look at that! Oh my goodness, this is fantastic! It's happened immediately! This is amazing!
To fans around the world, Murray Walker will always be remembered as the voice of Formula One. But he was so much more. When those fans turned on their televisions to watch Grand Prix racing, Murray also became part of their family.
Returns to Europe. This is round 14 of the 16-race World Championship and the end of the European season.
He was right there, watching with them, guiding them through F1's twists and turns, delighting in its dramas, and larger-than-life One's future superstars fell in love with the sport by listening to Murray on a Sunday afternoon. Murray's mission was simple. He wanted to share his passion for motorsport, and it didn't matter if it had 2 wheels or 4. Murray just wanted to talk about it.
To put it very mildly indeed.
He told the story of Britain's golden era of bikes, from Mike Hailwood to Barry Sheene. So when Murray arrived in Formula One in 1978, he already had a way with words. It wasn't only the years honing his commentary, but a career in advertising too, where he had an ear for catchy slogans. Remarkably, Murray had fitted broadcasting around his day job until he retired. Meanwhile, the dramas brewing in Formula One, both on and off the track, were the perfect backdrop for Murray's distinctive talents. Here was a voice to tell the viewer all about the magic and mayhem of this most dramatic of sports, and to tell it with genuine emotion and joy.
You've joined us at a tremendously dramatic moment! My goodness, what excitement at Monaco!
In 1980, James Hunt, the charismatic 1976 world champion, joined Murray in the BBC commentary box. Like most F1 teammates, there were moments of friction, and the pair had to share a microphone so they didn't both talk at once. But over time, their chalk and cheese pairing became one of Formula One's famous double acts. Murray, the pants-on-fire commentator, and Hunt, the laid-back but no-nonsense analyst. Many of the drivers Murray talked about on track seemed to adore him too. He respected all the drivers and told their stories with care and attention. Murray said no other driver gave him more drama to describe than Nigel Mansell. Murray providing the soundtrack as Mansell Mania swept Formula One to unprecedented levels of fandom in the United Kingdom.
They'll both go out! And Mansell is furious!
Nigel, first of all, will you carefully and slowly take your hat off? You've got an enormous bump on your head. Can you let them see it?
I don't know whether... There you go.
Right up there. Oh, I'm sorry.
A family tie connected Damon Hill with Murray. He commentated on his father Graham Hill's own stellar career and followed Damon's from the start. And when Damon finally won the world title in 1996, the emotion was only too real.
Damon Hill!
Late in his career, Murray formed a formidable new partnership with Martin Brundle, the duo guiding fans through the early years of Michael Schumacher's dominant Ferrari reign. And when Murray retired from the commentary box in 2001, Michael happily agreed to one more interview with Murray to mark the occasion.
Yeah, here we are. Here's Michael Schumacher. Oh, Michael.
I'd like to thank you for all the job you have done for us so far.
God, I don't know what to say. Michael Schumacher's just given me a bottle of champagne, which has been signed by all the drivers. Thank you very much indeed, Michael. Martin, bless you.
Murray's unbridled passion his ability to immerse himself so deeply sometimes led to the wrong words coming out, or at least in the wrong order.
3 lines, 4 lines, 5 laps. Pause.
These verbal hiccups became affectionately known as Murrayisms. Perhaps it baffled Murray slightly that these peculiarities became, in their own way, another one of his hallmarks.
It's the German Grand Prix in Hocken.
Bernie, it's some 17 years since you bought McLaren. What do you remember best?
I don't remember buying McLaren.
For nearly 25 years, Murray Walker lent his voice to Formula One. And what he said always came from the heart. It was never work to Murray. It was never just commentating. It was simply telling the world about something he loved. And for that, the world loved Murray too.
Between the two of them. The inside of Coates. Marcus gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Races done, 14 drivers in with a chance of winning. The MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing, powered by VRRC. Welcome everybody to the final two races. We're on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, as befits any good touring car showdown. And it is absolutely wide open. There's as much to factor in about racing as there is ballast about how good you are at maths in all of this, because there's a lot to keep tabs on over the course of our two 20-minute plus 1 lap races. And picking a champion is a bit like taking an entry list and a pin and inserting part A to part B, because it could be anybody's over the next couple of hours or so. David Addison and Andy McEwan with you for the final time in what has been, Andy, a fantastic championship.
It's been incredible, quite literally incredible. I mean, I don't think at the start of this process any of us would have predicted that we'd have quite the situation we have now. 14 drivers, 2 races to settle it all. And it is just so tight. A race win's worth of points virtually covers that entire group of 14 drivers that could still win the championship. So the whole thing could turn on its head after race 1, and we could still be none the wiser going into race 2 as to exactly what's going to happen. The points there you can see on the screen, it really could not be closer.
And it feels odd, doesn't it, having had 3 race wins, having been the driver that for the bulk of the season has carried the maximum 75 kilos of weight going into each event. Here we come to the last round, talking about Mike Epps, only 3rd. He always seems to have been the man to beat, along with Isaac Smith, more wins than anybody else at 3. And yet Rob Butler, who's missed an event, don't forget, missed 2 races after he became a father. There he is, courtesy of a good run last time out at Silverstone, plus a win right at the start of the season here on the Indy circuit. He leads the championship by 4 points from Jack Keithley, who in a sense is another odd one to find right up there, Andy, because as we've said virtually every weekend, his season has been really yo-yo. He's had some ups and some downs, and yet there he is, a possible champion.
Yeah, exactly. No wins yet for Jack Keithley, and you get these little oddballs all the way throughout this top 15. I mean, you talk about Rob Butler having missed a round. Dan Zelos missed the first half of the season, basically, didn't he? The first 3 events, first 6 races, Zelos wasn't even here. But 3 podiums and a race win recently have put him right into contention. And because he's that close to the top, it really is not beyond the realms of possibility that we could have a Dan Zelos or a Senna Proctor, someone outside the top 10 in the points, could still be champion in about an hour and a half's time.
And even if they can't be champion, they can take points away from others, which therefore affects the overall outcome anyway. So yes, as ever, touring cars, end of season, Grand Prix circuit, a lot to look forward to. Before we get to qualifying, where there is a point for pole, don't forget, which could be crucial, let's have a look at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. David Ward, this week's guide.
Hi, my name's David Ward and drive the Honda Civic for FastR Esports, and I'm going to take you for a lap of the Brands Hatch GP circuit. Onto the start and finish straight, we begin to move over to the left and pick up the brake marker, down one gear and turn into Paddock Hill. Just clip the curb and let the car run out. Now we'll prepare for Druids, the tightest corner on the track. Down 2 gears, get the car turned in and get on the power early, letting the car run out wide. Now move over to the right for Graham Hill Brend. Make sure to get the car turned in early for a good exit and use all of the runoff. Next up we have Surtees. You want to get hard on the brakes, down 1 gear for a late apex, slight oversteer here, but important to get on the power early for the fastest part of the track. We'll get up to 6th gear and head down into Pilgrim's Drop. Now braking into Hawthorne, we'll let the car run out wide, keeping that speed up. Next up is Westfield. We want to use all of the curbs on the entry and exit as we head down towards Dingle Dell. The next corner is blind turning. We want to use all of the curb on the entry and keep that momentum up before we brake hard and go down 1 gear for Stirlings. Important to use that camber and carry that speed through onto clearways. Now up through the gears before we brake for Clark. Let the car run out wide and aim for that Marshall Tower on the inside. We're going to hug the pit wall all the way down the straight and we'll cross the finish line. That's the lap of the Brands Hatch GP circuit. Thanks for watching and hope to see you on track soon.
So qualifying underway. There is the championship leader, Rob Butler. Just to remind you who the Magic 14, as it were, currently are: Rob Butler, Jack Keithley, Mike Epps, Jordan Brennan, Charlie Oliver, Callum Newsham, Max Bird, Dave Marshall, Robbie Stapleford, Isaac Smith, Senna Proctor, Dave Newsham, Dan Zelos, Max Goff. Those are the 14 drivers who mathematically have a chance of winning the championship. As we keep saying, it is an extraordinary number. We'll lose a few, no doubt, from the list of possible champions as we get through race 1, but it is going to be still a mighty competitive second race, and anything could yet happen. Jack Keithley, hard at work, Williams eSports driver, of course, and somebody that has on occasions flown under the radar. You sort of ignore him, and other days he's been bang up there at the front. It's been a really odd sort of a season, hasn't it?
Yeah, as I said, no wins yet, and 4 podiums isn't necessarily something you think was much to write home about, but he's been consistently inside the top 10. Don't forget, though, that he, like Rob Butler and Mike Epps, also had a weekend where he didn't score any points. Croft was a pointless pair of races for him, so the top 3 in the championship have all had that one weekend where they've maybe been a bit short of luck, and what they'll be hoping is that they've had that bad weekend now, and that it's not going to happen at the finale. That's always the fear, isn't it? When you've managed to avoid too much trouble throughout the previous 7 events, you kind of get to the finale thinking, well, surely it's my turn next to have a bit of misfortune. So Jack Keithley, Rob Butler and Mike Epps might be quite happy to have got that out of the way by now.
Jack Keithley is one of many in the leading 14 with championship penalty points. It's almost like having a drop score within the championship. So if you gave him his penalty points back, he'd be on 125 and ahead, but actually jointly ahead with Charlie Oliver, who's got a whopping 13 championship penalty points that you incur for various misdemeanours across the course of the season, largely driving standards related. The one that hasn't got any penalty points is Dave Marshall, and he is currently the quickest from Senna Proctor. You've got to feel a bit for Senna because the only win that he's had was then taken off him for infringement during the race, so he is effectively winless. Dan Zelos 3rd in the times, Max Goff 4th, and where is Rob Butler in all of this? Of course, the championship leader way back in 18th. Now, next thing to factor in, of course, Andy, is the ballast. Hilly circuit, the Grand Prix circuit, lots of ups and downs, and the weight will play a part round here.
Yes, it's not the easiest of places to carry the ballast. As you say, lots of ups and downs. That means that accelerating in particular up a steep hill, as they do out of Surtees there, for example, not easy. However, the Grand Prix part of the circuit, perhaps it doesn't affect you too much. Once you get the speed up, it's not that hard then to carry the ballast. Having said that, all of those that are carrying significant ballast are struggling. Mike Epps here carries 57 kilos by virtue of being third in the championship. Makes a bit of a mistake there coming out of Westfield Corner. He is only 10th at the moment. Jack Keithley, who is the second heaviest car out there with 66 kilos, he's only 12th. And as you said, Rob Butler, points leader, down in 18th. Mike Epps has spent more of this lap on the grass than the tarmac. So I doubt, in a way, that we're going to see another improvement from him here. And with only 5 minutes to go, I wonder whether Mike might be a little concerned. In fact, he bails for the pit lane to try and get an extra set of tyres for his final run. We were kind of saying, weren't we, off air before, David, that this is the first time Mike has not been carrying maximum success ballast since we were here on the Indy circuit for rounds 1 and 2. So I maybe expected a bit more than now 11th place in qualifying.
But he knows how to do this, Mike Epps. You don't rule him out until the checkered flag comes out, do you? I know there's only 4.5 minutes to go, but Mike always gives that impression of being able to pull something out of the bag right when is required. Equally, he might already be thinking of the weight and trying to work forward to that reverse grid front row, but that's a bit of a gamble given that there are so many other drivers to factor in. And quite often, if you're going for a championship, you are able to take account of what your main rival or rivals are up to. I suspect with 13 other people to take into consideration, that's pretty much impossible.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of just have to go for it, don't you? And sort of hope for the best. But it does mean that because we've got so many drivers that are within such a small blanket of points, 25 points cover 1st to 14th, with still 43 points left on the table. So virtually every overtake that we see for a points-paying position, remember, points are scored all the way down to 15th in each race, so the vast majority of overtakes we see out there are going to have some bearing on the championship. The one driver, I suppose, that we don't have to worry about too much is Max Coates. Max does not score championship points. He is a guest driver in the series, and so he is the only one maybe that if one of the championship rivals find him bearing down on them, they might not fight him too hard, because when we get to the end of the race, you delete him from the race order, everyone behind him moves up one place anyway.
That's right, in terms of the points scored, yeah. So that's something else we've got to factor in. You might be lying 6th, for example, but if you're behind Max Coates, then you're getting 5th place points. Now, there is Max, hard at work. It's good to have him in this championship. As we say, he's really here as a guest to give the AOC Gaming entry extra track time, but it's a shame he hasn't been able to do the whole season, and indeed isn't scoring points. We know from Clio's and the Mini Challenge most recently what a competitive driver he is, and Max Coates currently 6th in the championship, but of course he's ballast free. Dave Marshall, who is the fastest, has really fallen away, 8th in the championship, so he comes here with only 21 kilos of extra weight, but Senna Proctor out of the top 10, ballast free, and he's 2nd.
Yeah, Senna Proctor is one of those 4 drivers in championship contention who don't have to carry ballast. And remember, the ballast is carried across both races, so it doesn't adjust after race 1. So for the entirety of today's racing, Senna Proctor, Dave Newsham, Dan Zelos and Max Goff are weight free, and that's going to help them now in qualifying. Obviously, they'll be able to set a good pace, buy themselves some good track position for race 1, but then in race 2, it should make overtaking a little easier on a circuit at which overtaking can sometimes be a bit of a premium, especially if you're then hampered by a significant amount of weight. So I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb here and say that given the run that he's had recently, I am not writing Dan Zelos in particular out of this championship fight. Dan arrives at this race 24 points off the championship lead, but 75 kilos lighter than the points leader, and look at him, 3rd on the grid. A podium result in race 1 puts him right in the conversation going into the finale.
Yes, I was thinking Dan Zelos myself, actually, a little while ago, because he's just looked very, very impressive since he arrived midway through the championship. But as you say, he's just got on with the job, he's scored well, and has been a race winner. 9 different drivers have taken race wins, actually make that 10 in a sense, because Senna Proctor won on the road, but it didn't keep his win. That goes to show you how competitive the championship is as well. And we're almost at the end of qualifying now. Straight away, you've got to think points here, because Dave Marshall could be on for an extra point, which would bring him equal with Callum Newsham and Max Bird up to 111. So straight away, the championship situation would start to be affected, wouldn't it?
Yes, but Dave Marshall only has that pole position by 93 one-thousandths of a second over Senna Proctor. Fellow Honda driver here, Max Bird, down in 11th place at the moment. He is carrying 33 kilos because he is 6th place in the championship. Jack McIntyre is one of the few drivers out there who's not fighting for a championship. He just wants to try and end the season with some good results. He's got a grass tracking Peugeot up the road there. That is Rob Butler, isn't it? Number 74 car, championship leader, who is not going to improve on this lap from 20th place. Oh dear. But Jack McIntyre hoping that he can. So too Alex Toth-Jones, another driver who was a late entry into the series and has had some real flashes of pace.
He has. Isaac Smith has been another one that's yo-yoed, and he's only got 9 kilos, but still struggling, it looks, to convert that into pace. Here he comes. He's got the road to himself coming out of Clark Curve, but I fear he might well be greeted by the checkered flag here, because 3, 2, 1 seconds are on the clock. Flag will go out, and Isaac Smith, 17th at the start of the lap, not shown as having taken the flag. He might just have squeaked through there and got an extra lap out of the session, but either way, struggling to make up pace. What about Jordan Brennan here? He's 14th, as Dave Marshall, at least for the moment, looks as though pole is his, but can he keep it?
Yeah, let's find out. Jordan Brennan then is a lot further up the championship table than I thought, with the greatest of respect, because Jordan, not only has he not had a win, hasn't had a podium all season long, and yet here he is, 4th place in the championship. He bails for the pit lane low, so no improvement. This is an important lap. What can Dan Zelos do? If he can even break into the front row, that would give him a real crack at maybe taking maximum points from race 1, and he really does need that if he can get his championship on track. The first 6 races of the season he missed, and yet he is still a genuine championship contender, arguably one of the favourites because of his lack of ballast. He comes through clearways though rather off the pace, and yeah, he's going to head for the pit lane. So 3rd, as good as it will get for Zelos.
So Dave Marshall looks like pole is his. What about Robbie Stapleford, 10th, but he's got quite a chunk of time to find relative to those around him. He's got 15 kilos of weight in the car, and he's another of the drivers, of course, that has taken a victory this season. That came at Alton Park. He also got a 2nd place in the reverse grid opener on the Brands Indy circuit, but I don't think he's going to complete the session either. No, he's not. So it does rather look as though Dave Marshall is the man, and with that pole position then, as I say, that gives him an extra point, brings him up to 111 then going into our first race. And don't forget, you get a point for fastest lap in the course of the race as well. So there's that point to factor in. So Dave Marshall then, provisional pole position, with Senna Proctor lining up with him at the front of the grid. Dan Zelos then goes 3rd fastest ahead of Max Goff. He will start 4th. He's another in with the championship battle. So too 5th on the grid, Charlie Oliver, and 6th is Max Coates. 7th, Jack McIntyre. 8th, Dave Newsham. Our most recent winner, David Ward, will start 9th, and Robbie Stapleford 10th. After that, you've got Max Bird, who is going to be 11th on the grid, and Mike Epps starting 12th. But, Andy, a really good session that for our pole position driver, and I think I'm right in saying it's his first pole of the year through qualifying. It is, and that is Dave Marshall.
Yeah, really good performance there for Dave Marshall. Really important one too. Dave, congratulations. Not a bad time to get your first pole position.
Yeah, cheers for that, Andy. You know what? Fair stressful, the strategy I've had all season. I very quickly realised that with the weight, you definitely don't want to be coming into the last round with, you know, the ballast of the top 3. So yeah, I mean, a bit of a strange scenario in the last race to be actually letting cars pass to try and calculate points and where you're going to be in the championship table, but I think I managed to judge it just about right. Only losing out to the 2 places in front by a point. So if I've been that 1 point higher, there's an extra 2 places worth of ballast. So it's a bit risky, but it looks like it's paid off so far, Andy.
Well, yeah, because you've just scored that point straight back with the pole position, of course, so you're now part of a 3-way tie for 6th, but you're only carrying 8th place ballast. So yeah, to your point, that really has made a big difference to your performance around here. Those that have ballast are really struggling, so you've really got to capitalise now. You've got the track position, you've got a relatively light car, you clearly are in sync around this circuit. So what do you think? Is the race win on the cards here?
You know what? I've always gone reasonably well at Brands GP, and I love the track, especially if you can get in the floor early. It's really nice track to drive. But, you know, I mean, the weight really hurts you around here regarding lap time. But from the previous races with weight on, I think I've had nearly the top weight for the past 4 races. So in the races where it really hurts you, you know, if you get hindered in any drive out of a corner, you know, you're losing probably, you know, 3 to 4 tenths a lap following a driver who doesn't have weight, because you have to slow down mid-corner a bit more. So, you know, if I'm honest, I'm a bit jittery. I've played the game, and, you know, I've got a few points to crawl back, but I hope I can do enough to regain it back, but we'll wait and see, eh?
Well, you've answered my next question already then. I was going to ask how the nerves are, because there is a lot of pressure on this. You know, there are some pretty tasty prizes up for grabs here if you can win, and you'll be able to say that you beat some real-world touring car drivers and some of the top sim racing touring car drivers out there. So there's a lot on the line here. How do you manage those nerves in a situation like this?
I think when it comes to the race in qualifying, you know, you go almost into a different zone, really. You're not thinking about anything of what it stands for. I turn everything off on my screen relating to what lap time I can possibly do, and I just get my head down and just go for it. You know, but it's one of them things when you're sitting around waiting and you're thinking about it a bit. Obviously, it matters, but it's normal to have nerves. So it's just keeping it under control and, you know, realising who I'm around. You know, I've got Senna Proctor and Dan Zelos behind. You know, I've been coaching Dan up to the run up to this race, so I know Dan's got pace in the car, but I also know he's not going to do anything daft. And Senna likewise. We've got a really good friendship with Senna, so hopefully he won't do anything daft on the opening few laps, and we can sort of just gap the field and pull away, really.
Well, that sounds like a plan, Dave. Let's see if you can act on that. Best of luck for this race. It's going to be a cracking final 2 races of the year, and can't wait to see who comes out on top. Good luck, mate.
His plans don't always work.
Yeah, indeed. Dave Marshall then on pole position scores that point, and David, that's really interesting what he said there, that he dropped points deliberately at Silverstone. We wondered if people would try to do that, didn't we? And he's immediately got that point back, so that could have proved to be a strategic masterclass.
It could, absolutely. And if he can make a decent start, and as he suggests, keep out of trouble, then, yeah, anything could be possible. Right, we get the countdown then for the race. We've also, in the last few minutes, touched on tasty prizes for the Real Racer champion, a Riggs SR7 sim chassis, a GTF1 race seat with AccuForce V2 Pro Direct Drive wheel, OBP eSports hydraulic pedals, and AOC curved display goes to the champion. Tank Tools give a toolkit with roll cabinet to the runner-up. There's a Riggs SR3 sim chassis, a GTF1 race seat with a Fanatec CSL Elite wheel, OBP eSports hydraulic pedals and AOC display to the third place driver. On it goes. There's a lot at stake over the course of these 2 races, and the first is about to get underway. The lights in a second will go out. We go racing then. The penultimate race within the championship is underway. Who makes the best start? They make the run up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. Dave Marshall gets away smartly as Dan Zelos goes to the inside line there. Is he going to be able to squeeze through on the inside? Let's see as the cars make the climb up towards the right-hander of Druids for the first time. Zelos gets his elbows out, gets ahead of Proctor, but look, Marshall's already away and gone.
Yeah, look at that start for Dave Marshall, taking full advantage of the side-by-side racing behind. Charlie Oliver there on the inside of Jack McIntyre there, fighting for position, for 5th position that is, right at the back of the top 5. The car's on the grass further back, and look at Mike Epps. He's involved in a 3-wide battle there with Robbie Stapleford as they go into Surtees. The man third in the championship goes up the inside of both of those cars and picks up a couple of positions. So Mike Epps getting stuck in straight away here. You're right, though, that was a demon getaway from the race leader, and now we'll wait and see whether or not Dan Zelos has the pace to go after him.
Great battle pack there, diving down through Hawthorne. Butler versus Keith. They look side by side. That's your top 2 in the championship running together. Lots of corner cutting going through Westfield then to try and shorten the road, try to gain time as Butler goes through Westfield, drops down through Dingledale, climbs up Sheen Curve on the other side. But up front, it's Dave Marshall, already over a second to the good, and we've not done a full lap yet. So absolutely storming clear, helped, of course, by having a relatively light car as Butler now gets himself onto the train of cars. He's pushing hard, is Rob, but he's not yet, of course, getting any more than just 2 points out of this race, which is not enough because he has to carry the weight into race 2. He can't get rid of it like in real-world touring car racing. As Andy made the point earlier, the weight is the weight for the day. Over the line he comes, but it's Marshall, Zelos, Proctor, 1, 2, 3 at the end of lap 1.
Yeah, Rob Butler looking to try and first and foremost break into that top 12. Remember, it's a top 12 grid reversal for race 2. 12th place in this race equals pole for the second one. And that could, again, prove to be pivotal for the championship outcome. Back to Charlie Oliver, meanwhile. 7th place for him now. Then Max Coates has got past him on the second half of that first lap. And now he's got Dave Newsham right behind. Dave goes up the inside, in fact, makes a real lunge there into Surtees. That was a beautiful textbook move. And then in true touring car racing fashion, he just eases the Audi onto the grass. That loses Oliver momentum, and he might lose another place now, potentially to Isaac Smith, another championship contender. But yeah, Dave Newsham, for all of his dramas that he's had this year, that first win that he finally took a week ago at Silverstone means that he too could be our champion at the end of the night, as off goes Max Max Bird. Max Bird off heavily into the barriers, and that was involving, I think, Jack Keithley, was it, down at Hawthorne Corner. Yeah, Jack Keithley. So Jack Keithley second in the championship, Max Bird sixth in the championship, both in drama here on lap 2.
Okay, so Jack Keithley falls way back as a consequence of all of that. Dave Marshall, though, is still building that lead over Dan Zelos. Senna Proctor runs third. McIntyre is fourth. Max Coates fighting the car fifth on the road ahead of Max Goff. But of course, Max G will take the fifth place points, were things to say as they are, because Max C doesn't score, goes over the timing line now. And Max Goff has a cheeky look to the inside. Max Coates' car looking a lot looser than that of Max Goff behind him. You've got Dave Newsham 7th, Isaac Smith is 8th, Charlie Oliver 9th. Mike Epps creeping back into the mix now in 10th place. But Rob Butler is still mired down in 14th as you watch Max Coates at work. And right now, all he can do is defend. He can't attack because he's fallen away from Jack McIntyre, going very strongly indeed again in 4th place. But the race leader, even though he was 1.2 seconds clear early on, it's fluctuating a bit now. Dan Zelos had brought it down to within a second, heading up towards 30. So I don't think Dave Marshall is home and dry just yet.
No, Dave Marshall, of course, is a little bit heavier than Zelos, and that might take its toll, especially in the second half of the race if tyre wear starts to become an issue. So we'll keep an eye on that gap. It was about 1.2 to start with. As you said, it's come down a little bit now. Martin Richards here in the Powermax liveried Peugeot, 17th place with Max Edmondson ahead of him, and his teammate Alex Toth-Jones just behind. And looking at that timing tower, Jack Keithley, look, he dropped all the way down to 21st place. So Keithley is out of the points at the moment. And so that means that he's going to lose a lot of points as far as the championship's concerned. Edmondson runs wide. There is Keithley. Now, how much damage has been done to the car as well? We didn't really see how Keithley was involved with Bird. We saw Bird made pretty significant contact with the Armco. Keithley's car definitely is bearing a few witness marks. And look, Callum Newsham right behind him. So Callum Newsham also has been in strife here in the early stages.
Yeah, so that's two of them, Keithley and Callum Newsham, who were in the fight for the championship. And of course, Max Bird was in that 14. So 3 of the gun drivers all in strife. As you look at Jack McIntyre now coming up to have a go at Senna Proctor. Charlie Oliver hanging on to 8th place against Isaac Smith, who is crawling all over the back of him now. Mike Epps is there in 10th, inching up onto the back of them. Clock ticks on down then. The first quarter of the timed element has gone by as Oliver runs way out wide, coming out of Graham Hill Bend. Actually doesn't compromise the run onto Cooper Straight too much, but again the car looking a little bit nervous as it turns its way through the left surtees. Charlie Oliver, don't forget, has been our fastest lap king because he has taken, not fastest lap in every race, but certainly more than anybody else. He has just shown extraordinary pace at the majority of races. He's been a race winner and has certainly been one of the regular front runners within the championship. But on finals day, has he got the pace to now claw his way back up through the field as we go on board with Robbie Stapleford? He is 12, that's Jordan Brennan ahead, and Robbie makes a move, then comes up to the outside line. He's got 15 kilos of weight on board, and Jordan Brennan doesn't give him a lot of room.
Yeah, Jordan Brennan with 48 kilos, so perhaps you can understand how he's holding Stapleford up a bit here, and Stapleford can see the way that Mike Epps has driven away from this pair. You can see Mike up the road. He's almost on the tail, actually, of that next group, so more points perhaps in the offing here for Mike Epps, and Stapleford would really like to get himself into that battle as well. Right now, though, Robbie would be on pole position for race number 2, and as you made the point earlier on, he benefited pretty well out of the reverse grid race on the Indy circuit at the start of the year, finished second behind Rob Butler. So Robbie Stapleford in a position maybe to score some points back in race 2. As long as you can stay within 21 points of the championship lead after this race, you could still overhaul that, mathematically at least, going into race number 2. But realistically, you'd want to be within single figures, I think, wouldn't you? Within 10 points of the championship lead. Dave Newsham here turns his way through Surtees corner, 6th position for him, and Max Coates now starting to ask all the right questions of Dave Newsham, isn't he? Newsham had a bit more of a gap, I think, last time we saw them.
Absolutely right. Whereas ahead, Max Goff trying to get away, so he is escaping from the battle pack behind him. Actually, possibly Dave Newsham might be able to get away from Max Coates here. We will see as there. David Ward makes his dive to the inside of Robbie Stapleford, goes 12th on the inside, heading through Hawthorne. Bit of hit and shoulder, forces Robbie Stapleford off the road and back on again. Behind them is Rob Butler, who is still in only 14th place. Not only is he not scoring very well, he's not making progress, and there's no real sign that he's about to come storming through, so that weight is really affecting him here.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's just hard to pass. The places where you need to be quick to overtake people around here, under brakes and in acceleration out of the corners, they're the two places in which the ballast really hurts you. David Ward then through the final corner. Robbie Stapleford still on his tail, trying to... no, hang on, he's lost a place, hasn't he? Yes, so David Ward's got past Robbie Stapleford on this lap, and that means that Ward now would be on course for pole in race 2. Mike Epps, though, has caught Isaac Smith. So this is Mike Epps 3rd in the championship, Isaac Smith 10th in the championship. Smith is the lighter of the two, quite significantly, but this is a real testament, isn't it, to Epps' raw pace. Even though he's significantly heavier, he's bridged this gap with relative ease.
Yeah, that Ward-Stapleford switch was the one we saw up at Hawthorne with the rally crossing that Robbie Stapleford was rather forced to endure. A quick look at lap time suggests at the moment that Dave Marshall is the fastest man on the circuit. So again, bear in mind there's an extra point for the fastest lap. So getting away from the traffic, getting out of a battle, not wasting time by defending, again might well play into his hands as Mike battles on them. Mike's still in 10th place as you see Stuart Lyons coming up now to have a go at the Power Max Racing backed car of Alex Toth-Jones, the former Ginetta and Porsche racer. Stuart Lyons, who's been an occasional British touring car competitor, came out of Minis and the Volkswagen Racing Cup seasons back, and of course he looks after a number of real world championships now, does Stuart. 17th place with Jack Keithley, the man chasing after him.
Yeah, Jack Keithley trying to close in, and really needs to try and close in, doesn't he? But I'm not sure. Yeah, well, top 15 is doable maybe if Keithley gets a wriggle on. We're not quite halfway through this race, are we? So he could salvage a few points, but obviously he's going to lose a lot of ground in the championship as it stands. Mike Epps there never looks that animated behind the wheel, does he? I've commented before that it looks like he's almost bored, but I'm sure he's not. His heart rate will be up here. He knows that every point that he can get in this race, especially over another championship rival, could be pivotal. That's what he's trying to do. 9th place here is on offer if he can find a way past the Peugeot ahead of Isaac Smith. They drop into Graham Hill Bend. This isn't really an overtaking opportunity, but a good exit from here, which neither of them got because they're both on the grass, could allow you a chance to get up the inside into Surtees. Surtees is one of the better places to pass around here. On this occasion, Mike wasn't quite close enough.
Yeah, you can sometimes strike at Graham Hill Bend, can't you, if you sort of tee it up at Druids. If somebody's compromised there and offline down the hill, there might just be an opportunity. Of course, that corner reprofiled a couple of decades ago into a kink in the corner rather than one flowing left-hander. Epps right onto the back of Isaac Smith coming through Hawthorne, goes one side and then the other. Isaac getting his elbows out there, keeping Mike Epps at bay as they turn through Westfield. And again, Smith looking a little bit more rattled now. He's had 3 wins, Epps has had 3 wins, and Mike crawling all over him, but he goes deep there coming out of Sheen Curve, and that's cost him a couple of lengths.
Yeah, that was a mistake, a rare mistake from Mike Epps, really, wasn't it? We don't see him off the road all that often, but the pressure maybe just starting to tell. As it stands, by the way, Dave Marshall would have the championship lead after this race, would you believe? By my reckoning, he's got a 5-point advantage as it stands over Rob Butler, with Epps 2 points further back in 3rd. That's all very provisional, partly because the race isn't over yet, and partly because I can't count. But as my spreadsheet tells me, that's the situation. But it might change now because Max Coates goes up the inside of Max Goff. That doesn't actually take any points away from Goff because of this whole guest driver situation that we documented earlier on for Coates, but it does mean that Goff is now in the firing line from Dave Newsham, Charlie Oliver behind. So although that pass didn't cost him any points, it puts him in a bit more jeopardy now, and here is the proof of that, because up the inside goes Dave Newsham at Surtees. He's made this move before, but this time it's not clean. There's contact with Goff. They tangle again on the exit, and Charlie Oliver gets a run. They're 3 wide over the top of the hill. Charlie Oliver is not going to back down. 2 wheels on the grass, but he runs out of room, has to fade in behind them again. So side by side between Dave Newsham and Max Goff into Hawthorne corner. Goff on the inside. Newsham, is he brave? Does he stick it out round the outside? No, he doesn't. Finds a gap back in line. That could so easily have ended in tears.
It was a good save, though, from Max Goff, and he's got the place back then. So Dave Newsham, a little bit aggressive, arguably, but he perhaps with a little bit of self-censorship has given away the place. We've got another one off the road there, which was Jordan Brennan, falling way back into 16th place. So out of all of that, then, you've still got Goff running in 6th as he comes towards us. But, of course, it's 5th place points. Max Coates up the road, Newsham, and then Charlie Oliver behind. Now, given the pace that Charlie has shown so many times this year, I still think he could be a real threat, and we've seen late in the race how when he wriggles through traffic he's able to go storming along, so don't rule him out, and that of course factors him back into the mix for the championship going into race 2. Dave Marshall's advantage is a modest one up front, 7/10 of a second, but he's hanging on to the lead. Senna Proctor is there or thereabouts in 3rd place. Jack McIntyre is 4th and a bit lonely. 5th is Max Coates, who really has got away now from Max Goff. And Rob Butler has made progress. He's up into 13th at the expense of the Power Max Racing cars, plural, of now Martin Richards, the Drift King, and Alex Toth-Jones. So Rob inching forward, but you know, you're talking single points here. The increments when you're that far down aren't really that big, are they? It's a single point, whereas you go higher up the championship order, they're bigger increments for places gained. There, Oliver versus Newsham. Charlie briefly had his nose in front, but Dave Newsham goes back ahead on the plunge downhill.
Yeah, and this is allowing Max Goff to get a bit of breathing room again. Behind, Isaac Smith hasn't been caught again by Mike Epps, has he? So Epps, we saw him make that mistake at Sheen Curve a few laps ago. He's not really been able to recover. And here is Rob Butler, who now is actually under pressure from Martin Richards and Alex Toth-Jones, the two Power Max twins behind him. So far from gaining ground and maybe having a chance at the race 2 pole, Butler actually could find himself further down the order. Huge slide there for Alex Toth-Jones as he nearly throws it all away through one of the trickiest corners on the circuit. You're right, Rob Butler definitely struggling here with the ballast, and it looks as though this could be maybe his championship hopes disappearing, because not only is he losing points here, but he's not got a huge opportunity to gain them back in race 2 unless he can get into that top 12.
And also looking further down, you can see how the weight's affecting not just Rob Butler but Jack Keithley as well, because he is also, like Callum Newsham, struggling to find a way up through the traffic then. Dave Marshall's advantage 0.8 of a second, only 6 minutes plus a lap. This could get ugly between the two teammates at PMR, couldn't it? Because up the inside there goes Alex Toth-Jones, rubs up alongside Martin Richards. He's gained 14th place, elbows out. That takes the pressure off Rob Butler for the moment as he comes now wide through Graham Hill Bend onto Cooper Straight once more. Now, what else is going on? As far as the leading 10 concerned, that's for the moment just calmed itself down. But it's interesting, isn't it, how little progress those that were delayed early on are able to make. They're still struggling to go forward. They being the likes of Butler from a poor qualifying, Keithley from his earlier dramas, Callum Newsham and Max Bird, of course, who was the man fired off the road very early doors in the race. So they are still in strife, relatively speaking. And of course, Keithley out of the points, Newsham out of the points, Bird out of the points. Butler struggling 4 points here. He's only going to get 3 for third place. For 13th place, I should say, as Dave Marshall up front continues to be like a cash register, banking them for pole, for the win potentially, and for provisional in the fastest lap of the race as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that lap, he was a full 10th of a second quicker than Dan Zelos as well. So he's now... It must have been a mistake for Marshall a couple of laps ago that saw him drop half a second, because every lap since then, I've been watching it, he's been within a couple of hundredths of a second of Zelos, actually a bit quicker that time, as I said. So Dave Marshall looks like he's controlling the pace at the front. Further back, though, it is anything but control. Rob Butler is about to lose a position to Alex Toth-Jones. 13th place now goes to Alex, who is now 2.6 seconds behind the top 12. So I don't think any of these drivers are likely to catch the top 12 drivers unless there are some shenanigans ahead of them.
There are indeed. They're coming, because Dave Newsham there has got a drive-through penalty for cutting the corners. So out of 7th place, which is really 6th for points, Dave Newsham has to serve a drive-through. And if he doesn't have the time, 4 minutes and a lap remain, then it's a 30-second penalty at the end of the race. So we'll keep an eye as to whether Dave Newsham does serve the drive-through. But the point being that people behind will move up even further once he has to either serve the drive-through or that's converted to a time penalty. So things are going to change.
Yeah, well, that means the fight for 13th now will presumably become the fight for 12th, won't it? So all the more important that Rob Butler gets back ahead of Alex Toth-Jones if he can. But as you can see on the timing tower, the gap's going up between the two rather than down. It's 6 tenths now between 13th and 14th, and that, we think, one way or another, will become 12th and 13th once Newsham Senior serves this penalty. Into clearways he comes. Will he dive for the pit lane this time? Yes, he does. So that's handy, because it takes him out of the picture immediately, and we'll get a real-time look at where he re-emerges. But he's going to drop quite a few positions. It's a fairly lengthy process and a very low pit lane speed limit here at Brands Hatch, because it's such a tight pit lane. The speed is quite low, so you can see him dropping down. He's going to rejoin just alongside that battle, but he will be behind them. So that moves Toth-Jones into 12th. Rob Butler 30th, but under pressure there, wasn't he, from Martin Richards? Look, Richards now trying to get back ahead of him. So they gave Rob Butler a hint, maybe, of a chance to get back onto the race 2 pole, but now maybe that's looking a little less likely.
think I'll go along with that, yes, as also Senna Proctor is under huge attack for his third place from this man, Jack McIntyre. Now remember that Proctor is weight free, but in with a chance of the championship, so he does not want to, he cannot afford to give away places. He's got McIntyre right up behind him. Turn now through the right at Westfield, ride the curb on the inside. McIntyre lets the car wash out ever so slightly. Drop down through Dingledale, up the other side, approach Sheen curve. Over the curb on the inside, keep on turning. Short straight and then brake hard, turn left into Stirling's, and again narrow section of circuit that, so not an obvious overtaking opportunity unless somebody gets it wrong ahead of you and he's compromised on the run to the corner. Clark Curve here out of Clearways is an opportunity, but Jack Mack a little bit too far back for the moment. Proctor defending well, but in so doing, of course, is letting Dan Zelos get away.
Look at the lead gap. It came down by 6/10 that time. I think Dave Marshall just had a mistake, and Dan Zelos is suddenly right on his tail. There they go. Look up Halewood Hill. The fight for third was getting interesting, but this has some serious championship significance. Dan Zelos already on for 17 points. If he can get himself ahead of Dave Marshall, well, Dave would still have the points lead going into race number 2 by my maths, but by a reduced margin, and Senna and Dan Zelos would move even further up the table. So this is an important chance now for Dan Zelos. It must have been another mistake that from Marshall, because his previous lap was a 29.4, Dan Zelos a 28.8, so that was a big chunk of time lost. We can see them on the inset as the third place battle comes down the hill. Completely different dynamic here. Only one of these two drivers is fighting for the championship, and it's the car defending. Jack McIntyre doesn't care about the points. He just wants to get another podium here in the penultimate race of the season.
Ideally, he'd like a win out of the weekend if he could possibly do so. This final brace of races within the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing powered by VRRC. Senna Proctor, who is also after a win, a maiden win, keeping Jack McIntyre at bay for the moment, but McIntyre looking the quicker of the two. We're going to squeeze 2 more laps out of this, I think, given the clock being at 50 seconds. So there's the time plus the regulation lap as Senna Proctor, who of course has been a real world touring car race winner at Brands Hatch for Power Max Racing going back a few seasons. He hangs on to third. McIntyre right there behind him in fourth as they come up towards the line. They'll break the beam in a moment and go through now. Do so up towards Paddock Hill Bend. Half a minute of the timed element to go as McIntyre slides into Paddock. Does that compromise him? It does. Loses 2 lengths there.
Yeah, that means he's not close enough to have a go into Druids, which again is another possible place to try and pass. Meanwhile, Zelos not letting Dave Marshall get away with that mistake, is he? He's keeping the gap at just a few car lengths, both of them really utilising the track limits that are clearly fairly generous coming out of Graham Hill Bend. And they're pairing off here, aren't they really? 2 for the lead, 2 for third, and now 2 cars fighting for 5th with Max Goff and Charlie Oliver. Again, championship points up for grabs here, and for Charlie Oliver, who's only a couple of points away from being second in the championship at this stage, he really could do with them. He goes around the outside. That's always going to end with the Audi on the grass. There was no way Max Goff was going to leave him room there coming out of the turn, and indeed that was the case. So Peugeot stays ahead of Audi. They've got a decent gap over Mike Epps, nearly 3 seconds back to the man that's led the championship for the whole season, but it looks like he'll have to go into the final race at least 5 or 6 points behind the championship leader. What is going to happen ahead of him? Max Goff and Charlie Oliver absolutely together as they go through Dingledale.
So Charlie Oliver currently in that 6th place and pushing hard right now as Dave Marshall is about to start the last lap of the penultimate race of the championship. It is Dan Zelos behind him, 6/10, half a second under braking. I still think Dave has done enough, but it's going to be real heart-in-mouth stuff, this. He's got 1 more lap to go, and this could tee him up perfectly for the title going into race 2, couldn't it?
It really could, couldn't it? Meanwhile, behind, as hard as it is to drag our eyes away from this, there's been some big changing for 12th place. Dave Newsham had got himself back into 12th, but he's just gone off the road. So Rob Butler is once again on a course now for race 2 pole. But look who's behind him, Jack Keithley, who was off on the 2nd lap of the race, and he too could still get himself into that all-important 12th position. It's another one of those situations, and we've had so many this season, where you need about 6 pairs of eyes to keep track of all of the action. There's a battle for the lead, there's a battle for 3rd place, there's one for 5th, and that race 2 pole position that could be so pivotal. Keithley's lost a position now to Jordan Brennan, so Rob Butler might just have done enough here to get that race 2 pole.
Let's see then, but right now it is all eyes on Dave Marshall there, because he is looking oh so good for a race win. In the meantime here, Max Goff keeping Charlie Oliver at bay. They need to stay in the battle for the championship. Max Goff was the 14th driver in the 14 coming into the race, and they're getting a little bit roughed up by Charlie Oliver, who's going to go 5th on the inside line. Might have been a slightly aggressive start to the move. It's paid off for Charlie, although Max Goff comes back at him. Is he going to go through? He mows the lawn on the inside. And there's contact between the two. Take that, says Max. Charlie Oliver goes into the gravel as the leaders come out of Clark Curve. Then checkered flag at the ready. And it is going to be a race win. His first of the year, I think, to Dave Marshall, who comes across the line now to score the win. Second over the line is Dan Zelos. And what about third? It is Senna Proctor, who just keeps Jack McIntyre at bay as they come over the line. Fifth place, it is going to be Max Goff. And then sixth position, let's see, Mike Epps comes over the line. Seventh, Charlie Oliver, and then Isaac Smith for eighth place. Ninth goes the way of Robbie Stapleford, and it is David Ward comes through for 10th place. What about 11th? Alex Toth Butler does take 12th then. So 12th for Rob Butler, that is pole for race 2, and that could be absolutely crucial. So an excellent drive by Dave Marshall, and with 21 kilos of weight on board, that has, as we've been saying, teed him up nicely going towards the final race. A first win, and couldn't have come at a better time. Confirmation of the top 10 over the line. Dave Marshall, the winner, from Dan Zelos, second. Senna Proctor taking third ahead of Jack McIntyre. Fourth, Max Goff. Fifth, Mike Epps. Sixth, Charlie Oliver. Seventh, Isaac Smith. Eighth, Robbie Stapleford. Ninth, and David Ward rounding out the top 10. Right, we've heard from Dave Marshall already as a pole position driver. Now he can celebrate a race win, and he's headed to the interview booth. So too has Andy McEwan.
Go. Helps if I unmute my microphone, doesn't it? Yes, really looking forward to chatting to our podium finishers here, in particular our race winner Dave Marshall. Well, Dave, you did it, you got the win, but it wasn't easy, was it? Dan Zelos was really applying the pressure there towards the end. It looked like there was one lap in particular where you lost a big chunk of time. Did you have a moment out there?
No, if I'm honest, I think tyres have just gone off quite a bit towards the end. I'm carrying a little bit extra weight than Dan, hence why I think I just ran into that tyre degradation about 4 laps earlier than him, 3 laps earlier. And then we sort of, he gained within that second, and then, he dropped back to that second, and we were sort of there for quite a while. And then the last 3 laps, it was just a case of bringing the car home. I knew Dan wasn't going to do anything daft. I could tell he was pushing, but that's exactly the time when if you try and push as well, especially on tyres that aren't fit to do so, that's when mistakes can happen. So I was just bringing it home really, and Dan wasn't making it easy though.
Well, no, didn't think he would, quite frankly, because the championship here is very much on the line, isn't it? I mean, you came into the weekend with a slender advantage. By our reckoning, you've now extended the margin to something like 5 points over Rob Butler. Now, that's quite a sizable margin given how tight the championship's been. But now you have to start at the back and he's at the front. So what is the game plan coming into this all-important race?
Well, I know fine well. I can just see now we're spawned in on the grid. Rob's unfortunately got reverse grid, Annie, so he's going to be a sitting roadblock, really. He's not going to make it easy for anyone to get past, because why would you? He's that close to the championship. He's in the prime position. Mike Epps is just up in front. He'll be trying to push through and get the positions. But more to the point, my key rival, Jack Keithley, is behind me. So regarding the championship, I'm not really thinking of the overall at all. I did this with the Mini as well. It's too much to try and think of 2 separate championships at the same time. So the priority, bring home the Sim Championship. What result I get in the overall is what I get, But I'll be happy with the Sim overall. Anything else is a bonus.
Well, we've just had confirmation that provisionally you're 5 points clear of Mike Epps and Rob Butler tied for second. So that's your advantage going into race number 2. We'll be watching with interest to see how it all pans out. Well done, though, on the win. It was a good time to get that win, wasn't it? So best of luck for race number 2.
Cheers. Thanks, Andy.
Marshall, then your race 1 winner. Now, second place was Dan Zelos, and Dan, just to heap some more pressure on your shoulders, I tipped you at the start of the night as possibly our outside bet for the champion. Well, that second place certainly didn't do you any harm. You've moved up a few positions. What do you think? Is the championship still on the cards?
I think that's a little bit of a tough ask. I joined the championship a couple of rounds too late, I think. But no, I mean, Dave drove. a massive race. I was pushing as much as I could, trying to put him off where I could, but he just had the edge on me. So yeah, a little bit disappointed not to carry on the win streak after I had a win last weekend, but you never know what can happen in this race too. So I've just got a little bit of connection issues at the moment, so I'm hoping I can sort it and get out on the grid.
Right, well, in that case, we'll leave you to it. The last thing I want to do is distract you whilst you've got that to try and sort out. But Dan, well done on the podium, and best of luck for race 2. Zelos then, fingers crossed, gets those connection issues sorted. That would be unfortunate, wouldn't it? Third place for Senna Proctor. And Senna, you had your hands full there towards the end as well. You were coming under a lot of pressure from Jack McIntyre, who, of course, doesn't have to think about a championship. So does that make it harder, in a way, to defend against a driver who's got significantly less to lose?
No, I mean, fair play to Jack. You know, he was mega fair with me then. Obviously, like you say, I have a championship to think about, and I'm going to be pushing for that as hard as I can in this race. But yeah, he kept me honest, and this race is going to be quite slow paced. I think with Rob Butler in front, nothing to do with his driving, just the amount of ballast that he's carrying. So I'm going to be doing my best to get up towards the front and challenge for the championship.
Yeah, well, we've got you now 6th place in the championship, 119 points, with Dave Marshall on 132. So you've just got to get as far forward as possible here. What realistically do you think is a result that you can get here? I mean, a podium surely you feel is within reach. Could you even challenge for a win?
Like I say, it's going to be a slow-paced race in my opinion. I'm going to crack on, give it my all, and see what happens.
All right, well, we'll leave you to it then, Senna. Best of luck for this all-important final race. There you have it then, David. The stage is set for our final race of the season. Dave Marshall's got a bit of a cushion, but as we know all too well, it's never as simple as it seems. When the final race of the championship takes place at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, there are always fireworks.
Are there ever? Right then, it all comes down to this. What a season we have had. Our 10th different winner. And we've got, of course, now the drivers making their way to the grid. There's one more, I think, still to join there. One car making its way round to the grid. So there's a gap on the grid. Was that Dan Zelos, I think, may be missing as the lights are about to go out. The championship showdown then from Brands Hatch is go. Does Rob Butler get off the line smartly? Let's see then as the cars surge their way now up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. He does get a good start. So it is Rob Butler who leads the way. Bit of argy-bargy in the pack there. Look, as David Ward got turned sideways. Isaac Smith gets up on the inside of him. There's a car in the gravel at the foot of the hill at Paddock. And Rob Butler did lead to Druid. He leads coming out the other side. And as they drop downhill then into Graham Hill Bend, it is just Rob Butler in the lead. Right, there's a race to worry about. And there's all the championship permutations to worry about as Charlie Oliver gets some help onto the grass. And he comes back on and gets into the side of Mike Epps. It's all kicking off. Down they come then, so we've got the race leaders diving through Hawthorne, and can Rob Butler get his lead back? Alex Todd-Jones has gone ahead of him. Isaac Smith is catching up in 3rd place. Much lighter car, more mayhem, more cars in the barriers. Who's that we've lost out of all of that? Mike Epps is on the grass. There's the Jordan Brennan car involved. Jack Keithley's off the road as well, coming back in front of Kenny Press. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Craig Keeble also getting off the road. So I think we're going to have the race director looking at this, and the clerk of the course pretty busy. Are we going to have a safety car? Yes, I think we are. Look, everyone slows right down. Indeed, safety car is deployed. Whether it's the safety car or a virtual safety car, we'll double check. But wow, that was some first lap. It gives us time to at least catch breath and work out what the race order is. And it is Alex Toth-Jones ahead of Rob Butler, ahead of Isaac Smith at the end of the opening lap. Safety car also has the advantage here, and you're letting us do some more number crunching, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I mean, so much changed on that opening lap that I really don't know quite where we stand, but there were some winners and losers, weren't there? Mike Epps there picking up a couple of positions. Charlie Oliver obviously losing quite a lot. He's down to 13th place now, so Charlie Oliver was joint 4th in the points coming into this race. Won't be any more. Now, what about Dave Marshall? Dave Marshall is 10th, so Dave did manage to pick up a couple of places there, and we know that Davey played this strategy game at Silverstone a week ago to try and be lighter here at Brands Hatch. He's already taken some benefit from that in race number 1, but now he'll look to try and use that weight advantage to maybe gain ground slightly more quickly than some of the heavier cars are able to do it. One calculation I haven't yet done is how high up the order Marshall needs to get in order to guarantee the championship regardless of where the others are. I think he probably has to make it well into the top 5, but he's at least on his way with 2 places gained already.
If he gets 4th, he is... and Rob Butler stays 2nd, he would win it by a point. If Rob Butler wins the race, then Dave needs to be 2nd to avoid having to worry about a tie break. And in terms of just general points, I'll worry about that after we've gone racing, because we are about to get the race back underway. Alex Toth-Jones from Rob Butler, they are together, whereas Isaac Smith has dropped back a little bit, coming down towards Clark Curve. So, brief hiatus for a lap. We go back racing. Championship showdown, take 2. ATJ, Alex Toth-Jones tries to get clear, and he does go away from the much heavier car of Rob Butler, as there Robbie Stapleford in the background comes up to the outside to try to go 3rd at the expense of Isaac Smith. David Ward again in the thick of things. Max Goff tries to get past him, and Dave Marshall is still in 10th. What about Mike Epps? He's 7th. He's the other one we can't ignore, don't forget.
Yeah, Mike Epps losing ground there actually to Jack McIntyre. There are quite a few drivers in this gaggle that aren't in title contention, so that's they're the jokers in the pack, aren't they? They are certainly an unwanted distraction for those that are fighting for championship positions here. David Ward, another look, who's having a really good end to the season is David Ward, and bang on the pace again here this weekend in the FastR liveried car. Top 2 getting away then everybody else queuing up for 3rd. Isaac Smith, Robbie Stapleford, Max Goff, David Ward, Jack McIntyre, Mike Epps, and the list goes on. Stapleford up the inside of Isaac Smith for 3rd place. Did he get through? The orange Cupra is on the inside line going towards Westfield Corner, and Isaac Smith, I think, is going to lose out. Yes, he's on the grass as well, and so Max Goff gets up the inside, and David Ward, and then it's Mike Epps and Jack McIntyre wheel to wheel behind them.
We need to keep an eye on Max Goff for the championship, because even if he doesn't turn out to be the champion, I reckon he might be a dark horse for the runners-up spot, or a top 3 at least, because he's getting on with this. He's scoring quite nicely and not really drawing attention to himself. Rob Butler, in the meantime, I fear once the traffic catches, he's going to drop back down through the pack as Jack Keithley is under attack here. Look, Charlie Oliver is one of those with him, so is Jordan Brennan as they come up from Clark Curve towards the timing line once more. Dave Newsham is there in 14th place ahead of Max Coates, who doesn't score, so Max Edmondson is a notional 15th behind. There is Epps round the outside of Senna Proctor, under attack from Dave Marshall, and Dave now going for position as they break for Druids. Proctor through on the inside line. Epps gets run out wide. Dave Marshall is almost alongside him, but the inside at Druids translates to the outside for Graham Hillband. No way through there, slots back in behind him, and so onto Cooper straight now. But Mike Epps, you can see here, he's not looking bored at all, is he, this time, Andy? That is concentration, and through on the inside, Dave Marshall relieves him of 9th place.
Yeah, lovely move that from Marshall. Gets a bit of assistance on the exit of the corner from Mike Epps for his troubles. These two could do with working together, really, because fighting each other is going to get them nowhere. They both need to make progress and then try and settle it later. David Ward and Jack McIntyre now wheel to wheel in their Hondas, and McIntyre gets into the side, I think, of Ward. Ward is sideways. They make more contact. All of this going on ahead of Senna Proctor, who in 6th place in the championship needs to try and gain the points. Again, Ward is sideways. 3 wide, 4 wide through Dingledale. That will not end well. Someone's going in the kitty litter. It's Ward sideways on the inside. Epps came out of it. No, Epps is in the wall. Mike Epps is in the wall with David Ward. I thought maybe Epps had managed to come out of that well, but there was secondary contact coming out of Sheen Curve, and Mike Epps' championship hopes surely now are gone. He'll dig his way out of the gravel trap, but he and David Ward tangling. I mean, David, that was never going to work. Side by side through that part of the circuit is risky enough. 4 wide was always going to end in trouble.
Absolutely right, and I'm afraid that's the outcome. So Mike Epps rejoins, but can he salvage anything out of there? Even if he could catch up, of course, there's the damage done to the car. Alex Toth-Jones, in the meantime, is getting away up front. Now, Dave Marshall is up into 7th place. Rob Butler is still 2nd, so it's still Butler for the championship right now. But, of course, the higher up the order Dave Marshall gets, the narrower that margin becomes. He may overhaul Rob Butler, and at the moment Rob can't do anything to increase his score because he hasn't got the pace of Alex Toth-Jones, so he's utterly dependent now on what everybody else is doing behind him.
Yeah, I've got it at 3 points, the deficit then for Marshall at the moment. So Marshall needs another 2 or 3 positions at least here, doesn't he, in order to wrestle that championship lead back away. Or, of course, he needs Marshall to start losing positions, which could happen because Robbie Stapleford, having got past Max Goff, is only a quarter of a second behind Butler now. In the pack, meanwhile, Max Coates getting stuck in. Just a quick point to make here, David, as well. Dan Zelos, we heard him mentioning he had those connection issues, never got into the race. So Dan Zelos we can also wipe from the championship slate. There is the change for second. Stapleford up the inside of Butler. Butler then will lose 2 more points, which leaves him with just a 1-point advantage over Dave Marshall. 1 more place lost for Butler or gained for Marshall. We'll see the championship lead change hands again.
Right, well, I've got Marshall on 139, Butler on 142 at the moment, but I don't claim they're strictly accurate, but we'll see as Goff is about to relieve Butler of another place. So through he goes on the inside line there, through Paddock Hill Bend. So Rob Butler now, as I say, is utterly dependent on what everybody else is doing, and it might become all academic in terms of the points soon, because I reckon before the end of 11 minutes and 48 seconds, Dave Marshall will be up with him and challenging for position. That's Max Coates in the meantime, who is busy squabbling and has just gone ahead of Jack Keithley. So that puts Max Coates into the top 10 on the road. Of course, Jack Keithley still takes 10th place points.
Yeah, you're right about Marshall's points. He gained another position since I'd last checked. It's all changing so quickly in the midfield. It is quite hard to keep up. Max Coates then into 10th. Charlie Oliver will be his next target. And Charlie Oliver has Senna Proctor and Dave Marshall ahead. Now, these 3 are some way distant from the top 6, aren't they? 2.5 seconds between Jack McIntyre 5th and Dave Marshall... Jack McIntyre 6th and Dave Marshall 7th. So the chances of Marshall actually gaining any more places here will rely, I think, on others ahead tripping over each other and losing ground. Rob Butler, though, look, has lost that 3rd place now. So Max Goff has gone through into 3rd. That does now mean, I reckon, that it's a point between Butler and Marshall. 15 points would go to Butler as it stands. 9 would go to Marshall for 7th place. And actually, on this lap, Marshall is catching the top 6 anyway.
Yeah, that move that Goff pulled was the one we saw at Paddock, wasn't it? On the inside line to get ahead of Butler. So Rob 4th then, gives him 140 points. Dave Marshall 7th on 139. And it won't be long, I think, before Rob is under further attack from Isaac Smith. So we see this regularly on a championship finals day. You can only do so much. Remember, one year Jason Plato had to win the race, which he did, but the further up the order the opposition got, so the whole complexion of the British Touring Car Championship that year changed, and there was nothing else that Jason could do. He couldn't go any further ahead than winning the race. So it's a bit like that now for Rob Butler. It's what the rest are up to that's going to affect his championship outcome. He does not have the pace because the car is so heavy to fight back now. He needs people to trip over themselves, and it might well happen because we've only just nudged past halfway on the clock, haven't we?
Yeah, there's a lot more that can play out here, and you get down into those final few laps, and even if you think you've got it all secured, there's always something waiting around the corner to catch you out, isn't there? Just ask Dan Camish, for example, who really thought he had it wrapped up a couple of years ago. Mechanical issues, thankfully, shouldn't be a factor in sim racing, but there are plenty of other things that can still catch you out. Right, Senna Proctor and Charlie Oliver then, 8th position battle this is. This is Mike Epps' view, and now he's not best pleased. I think he's sort of resigned to the fact now that the championship is done. You can see the wheels shaking around there as well as he went down into Hawthorne. The car clearly is damaged. He's elected not to pit because he just wants to have the chance maybe of gaining a point or two should it all kick off ahead of him, but he's losing so much pace each lap. I really don't think he's going to be able to get himself significantly further up the order. Look, the car will hardly go around the corners.
But I think Mike Epps deserves credit for this. He's not spat the dummy, has he? He's stayed on the server. He's still in the race, and that's a mark of a proper driver, I reckon. So fair play to him. As you look at Dave Marshall now, trying to avoid the mayhem ahead of him. That was Isaac Smith getting involved, and as he runs out wide, Jack McIntyre was the one that was being mugged in all of that. So Dave Marshall is up into 5th, and he's up into the lead of the championship. Now, he runs wide at Graham Hill Bend, but the work is done. Keep out of trouble as their Senna Proctor runs off the road and falls down the order. So Rob Butler is currently running 4th. You've now got Dave Marshall up into 5th position. That's the title by 3 points provisionally.
Yes, because the other drivers that were close to them in the points aren't scoring very well at all, are they? The contact for Senna Proctor, by the way, I didn't see who it was with, but he got spat into the wall on the right-hand side of the road as they dropped down into Graham Hill Bend. So I think he tried to move across onto the racing line, but there was a car already to his right, and that again now takes him rather out of the fight. Drops down to 12th position just behind Jordan Brennan. There is Charlie Oliver then. He is the one that really needs to gain ground here. He was 4th in the championship. Now he currently runs in 9th position. This would score him just the 7 championship points then as it stands. But he, because of Rob Butler fading down the order, he could in theory still get himself into contention. He needs to get off up the road after Dave Marshall. And right now he's stuck behind Max Coates and Isaac Smith, who themselves are battling for 7th place. Coates to the outside into Paddock Hill Bend. He won't try and go right round the outside. Instead focuses on getting the better exit. Ducks to the inside, through the dip, up the hill. They're almost leaning on each other. Oliver thinks, right, how can I benefit from this? I know, I'll go 3 wide to the outside at Druids. That doesn't work. Coates goes through, leans on him. They both run wide, and Oliver might just gain out of this.
For a non-point scorer, Max Coates is sticking out the elbows, isn't he? He is having an effect on what's going on around him, that is for sure, as Charlie Oliver, Isaac Smith, and now Jack Keithley all get themselves together. Smith on the inside of Oliver. That could be turn ugly. It does. There's contact once. There's almost contact twice. Yes, there is there. Keithley tries to buy into this as well. And the Audi almost then up alongside the Golf, but right now it's Charlie Oliver who has the advantage on the inside line. Smith gets his nose in front on the outside line for Hawthorn. It's the longer, slower way round the corner, so Charlie Oliver goes back ahead as they sprint now up towards Westfield. Max Coates 7th, getting away from them, and Jack Keithley recovering, trying to get away up past Isaac Smith here.
Yeah, brilliant battling here, isn't it? And this is the great thing about this circuit. It's not easy to overtake here, but when the chips are down and the championship is literally on the line in this race, the drivers always find a way, and you get lots of situations like this where a pair of drivers will start battling, and because it's such a momentum circuit, especially around the back, it just stacks the whole next group of cars up together, and it creates this really dramatic racing with so much on the line. 2 Hondas at play now. This is Max Bird with Senna Proctor, 2 drivers who arrived here at Brands Hatch with a mathematical chance of the championship. Max Bird was the last driver, in fact, who could still have won the championship coming into this race. We only, for what it's worth, managed to go from 14 to 12 championship contenders after race number 1. So we still had 12 drivers that could have done it, although the top few had built up that nice little margin, hadn't they? Dare I say it here, things may be starting to calm down for the time being, in the midfield at least, and the head of the field, Toff Jones, still enjoying a 2.7 second lead. Let's not forget Alex Toff Jones here, because amidst all of the championship drama, he has just got on with it, hasn't he? And looks good for a pretty dominant win.
And that would be another first-time winner. So even as we get to the last round of the championship, there are people. Dave Marshall was one, and he's dropped back behind Rob Butler, as we saw, but he's there on the tail of him now, so he's ahead on points. He wants to be ahead of him on the road. Dave was a first-time winner earlier on in the day. As he heads towards the championship, seemingly, Alex Toff Jones could be another new winner as well. Right, Dave Marshall then to cement the championship, getting ahead of the man that came into this race as the championship rival, the championship runner-up. He is currently going to be, seemingly, Rob Butler. He was the leader at the start of the day. Dave Marshall all over him like a cheap suit now as they come down towards Clearways. Is he going to be able to make a move to the inside? Not this time, he's not, but of course, if he's playing the points game here, he will know he doesn't have to get ahead of him. He can just sit there and bank the point. But now, Andy, the move comes. The lighter car of Dave Marshall goes for the inside. The move starts at Clark Curve. It should finish at Paddock, and it does so. Dave Marshall goes through. He gains the place to further enhance the fact that he's on target for the title.
Yeah, Marshall's car just turns so much better through Clearways. It's over a crest, that corner, so the cars naturally want to understeer wide, and that is definitely what happened there to Butler in the extreme, and it allowed Marshall through. That was a crucial move, because Butler could have, if he wanted to, could have backed Marshall up, couldn't he, into the next group of cars and hoped for something to go wrong to his big championship rival. But full credit there, they raced cleanly, and Dave Marshall knew that was still quite an important move to make.
Alex Toff Jones, best of the season prior to today, a 5th. There he is leading the way then. Robbie Stapleford, a winner, is up to 2nd. Max Goff, an inherited victory he had, he's up to 3rd. Dave Marshall 4th, ahead of Butler, McIntyre, Coates, Oliver, Smith and Keithley. Lower down, Senna Proctor versus Stuart Lines, real world drivers. So to pick up on a point that was being made by Dave Marshall earlier, he wants to win the sim championship element of all of this, but he could of course be the overall, should be the overall champion, which would be quite something against a pretty good lineup, it must be said, of real world drivers. One make champions, touring car race winners. There on the inside, Jack McIntyre goes ahead of Rob Butler. This is where it all unravels for Butler. The weight now is telling. He's falling further and further and further into the pack.
Yeah, you just didn't ever want to be carrying that maximum ballast here at Brands Hatch, did you? And it's really going to cost Butler here. I think it's cost him 5th place in the race. Now it costs him 6th, although with Max Coates going through, as we've documented, that doesn't actually affect the points. Charlie Oliver, though, is catching him, and Charlie Oliver is on course here, I reckon, to take third in the championship, because with Mike Epps out of the points and Jack Keithley well down the order as well, Charlie Oliver is going to salvage, I think, a top 3 position in the championship, which again is not to be sniffed at given how strong the lineup is. You mentioned this mix of quick sim drivers and quick real world drivers, but the real world drivers that we have in this championship are also very good in the sim, so they're the best of both worlds. They've got the real world experience to put with a knowledge of sim racing, and that's what's made them such a formidable group of drivers for the sim racers to beat, and it's part of what's really made this season such a real pleasure to cover. The racing between the two classes, in inverted commas, has been so good.
Yeah, Rob Butler, although he doesn't do much real-world racing these days, is in the real racer class. He should be the class champion there, but he's lost another place on the road to Charlie Oliver, who goes through then up into 7th, which is really 6th, because Max Coates there doesn't score points, the invisible Max Coates, chasing after Jack McIntyre. A great shame that we didn't get Dan Zelos into this race. We've lost Craig Keeble from it. We've lost David Ward with his damage of earlier on, as right now Max Goff storms his way through Clark Curve, and he is getting closer to Robbie Stapleford. As I say, Max Goff shouldn't be discounted from his overall position at the end of the day, because he's just quietly got on with the job here of trying to bank points, hasn't he?
Yeah, he really has, actually, and amidst all of the madness, he's been able to actually stay out of a lot of the drama. Jack Keithley, that was a good move on the inside of Isaac Smith. A really difficult overtake to make. Oh, and it ends in contact coming out of the corner, as Keithley, I think, tried to just drift out wide when he wasn't quite clear of Isaac Smith, and that nearly sent the Audi into the barriers. But yeah, Jack Keithley makes the move into paddock. Looks like a really obvious place to try and overtake, but that big bump in the braking zone really unsettles the car. Makes it actually quite a difficult move to make. Good move, that.
Indeed so, as Max Goff gets on with the job then in 3rd place, Dave Marshall 4th, edging towards the championship. 2 more laps to go, there's this, and the clock, I reckon, will have another one in it, so yeah, 2 more at the end of this, before we get to the, of course, the regulation lap you have to factor in as well. That's Isaac Smith on Jack Keithley for 9th place, heading down through Hawthorne. Seems slightly odd, doesn't it, with all that we've said over the course of this championship about Jack Keithley. He will end winless, which I've got to say is a bit of a surprise. The Williams eSports driver has looked really racy on occasions. The Audi perhaps has been one of the quirky cars that has good and bad days, but it's perhaps a little bit surprising, given Jack's background in eSports, that he hasn't adapted as well as perhaps you might have expected to the touring car category.
Yeah, had it not been for that Croft weekend where he didn't score any points, nor did Charlie Oliver, actually, so to your point, I think that was a weekend where the Audis struggled as a whole. Had it not been for that, though, then yeah, Keithley might well have been slightly more of a factor for the championship, but has still really acquitted himself well, actually, and shown why the Williams eSports team have him as part of their roster. Stapleford here looks like he's going to repeat that podium that he had at Brands Hatch at the start of the year on the Indy circuit. Will it, though, be another 2nd place, or is he going to be demoted to 3rd? Because Max Goff looks a little quicker at this stage of the race, and they're both actually a bit quicker than Alex Toft-Jones ahead. So I don't know whether Alex is just pacing himself here, but that gap is now, I think, the smallest it's been for quite some time.
Mike Epps still persevering in 18th place. As I say, fair play to Mike for staying on the server, for staying in the race rather than bailing, as others have done when they've incurred damage or lost a decent result. He's staying out there. Dave Newsham is way back in 19th place as well. We've lost Max Edmondson from the race now as well. Right, the clock has hit 0, so it'll be 1 more lap at the end of this. And Alex Toft-Jones' advantage is not that great, is it? Robbie Stapleford is creeping up onto the back of him, and he's taking Max Goff with him. So it might be too little too late, this, for Robbie, but still get the feeling that Alex Toft-Jones might have to stick his elbows out, might have to work hard with a lap and a bit to go.
Yeah, I don't know where this pace has disappeared to. It can only be tyre wear, I guess. We did hear Dave Marshall saying that, didn't we, in the previous race? The tyres really went off, and that was another Peugeot driver. So Alex Toft-Jones a little bit lighter than Dave Marshall, but not massively. Maybe the Peugeots are working their tyres harder. 2/10 quicker that time was Stapleford, and Max Goff managed to match his pace as well. So Stapleford, if he doesn't have to defend from Goff on the final lap, he might get right onto the tail of Alex Toft-Jones before the flag. What Stapleford will really want here is to get close enough to get a bit of a slipstream out on the Grand Prix section of the circuit. To do that, though, you need to be within a second or so of the car ahead, and I just don't think he's going to get there. Toft-Jones has put together a good first sector here. the gap now is starting to extend again.
Max Coates has pitted right at the very end. Now that might be because of a problem, it might be to get out of the way of people fighting for points, but Max Coates retires to the pit lane then. I'm not aware of a penalty, but I think he's out of the race, so poor old Max, after good pace, also falls out of things. There he is, so Max Coates is out, as Alex Toth-Jones in the meantime comes out of Hawthorn. He is on target for a win, but Max Goff, look, he's about to go for second place, is he? He had a look to the inside line, can't do it. So as Alex Toth-Jones leads the race, it is anybody's for second, and Dave Marshall is closing up as well. He won't want to get too close just in case he suddenly gets wiped out of all of this, but Robbie Stapleford hanging on for the moment to second place. Toth-Jones then down towards Clearways, the last lap then of what has been an outstanding championship. Yet another new race winner coming our way. Alex Toth-Jones then turns his way through Clark Curve, round 16 of the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with PowerMax Racing, powered by VRRC, is won by Alex Toth-Jones. The championship is won by Dave Marshall, fourth over the line. A brilliant season. The race behind Alex Toth-Jones, it was Robbie Stapleford and Max Goff. Dave Marshall takes fourth ahead of Jack McIntyre, then Charlie Oliver, Rob Butler, Jack Keithley, Isaac Smith and Jordan Brannan to round out the top 10. Max Bird goes through 11th ahead of Martin Richards. Action right the way through the field. You've got a feel for Mike Epps, because for much of the season he's always been championship leader, Mike Epps, and yet when it counts, even with a lighter car, it was just not his day. Damage done early in this second race. He's going to make it to the line 17th. It should have been, it could have been a whole lot better. Fair play to Mike Epps for sticking at it rather than retiring from the race, but you could argue that wherever he ends up in the championship, it isn't fully representative of what he showed. But that was some race, kept us guessing right the way to the end. Lots of good drives. We'll discuss driver of the day in due course. The race result then, Alex Toth-Jones takes the victory ahead of Robbie Stapleford and Max Goff in third. It's Dave Marshall for fourth ahead of Jack McIntyre, and then Charlie Oliver from Rob Butler, Jack Keithley and Isaac Smith. So the timing screen is updating itself as people are disconnecting. So what you have there is a slightly distorted view, but it's Alex Toth-Jones, Robbie Stapleford and Max Goff, the top three. Dave Marshall as our provisional champion as well, and hopefully we'll be able to have a word with all of them in the interview booth. There are, of course, a few incidents to look at and a few numbers to be crunched. I think we're pretty much convinced with what we've got. One thing we can definitely say, a race win for the first time for Alex Toth-Jones, and he is with Andy McEwan.
Yes, he is. Alex, huge congratulations on that race win. I mean, you really just got on with it there right from the get-go. Good start, built a nice lead, and just sort of held on for the rest of the race. It looked quite easy.
Yeah, I'd like to say it was easy, but quite hard to lead, not make any mistakes, especially with the front tyres going off so quickly. Had a nice little battle with Rob at the start. That was mega. He didn't give me too much of a hard time, but once I got away, I knew I had to get a gap because, yes, anything can happen. And I did drop a wheel with about 5 minutes to go, which kind of got me on edge, but just maintained the gap, kind of kept my pace all the way through the race. And yeah, absolutely buzzing for that one.
Yeah, we heard Dave Marshall say in race one that the tyres were a bit of a factor towards the end. Is the Peugeot harder on its tyres than some of the other cars, would you say?
I'm told that all the cars are identical, so I can't honestly say on that one. I think it's more of a track kind of characteristic. That front left takes an absolute hammering, especially around the back section, and anywhere from halfway into the race, you're really struggling to get the car to turn in. Yeah, no, I'm not bothered about the tyres right now. I'm absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, as well you might be, because it's a really difficult field in which to jump in halfway through a season and be competitive in, but that's what you did really. Once you shed that newcomer's weight midway through the season, you've been there or thereabouts throughout each one of the rounds that you've done. Have you enjoyed racing in the series?
I love it. It's so competitive, and it definitely brings out a side to me which lockdown is hiding away. But yeah, I think I'm a rear-wheel drive driver, so front-wheel drive's been a bit of a hard thing for me to adjust, but once I got my head around it, I'm almost there. My ultimate pace is a little bit to find, but yeah, race pace felt good today, and just got to say massive thank you to PowerMax and VRRC for putting me in the car. They didn't have to, the opportunity came up, and yeah, just glad to have a win now.
Yeah, and a pretty dominant one as well by the standards of this championship anyway. Well done, Alex. Been great to have you on board. A great addition to the grid throughout the second half of the season. Thanks for joining us, and congratulations on ending the season on a high.
Thank you, mate. Pleasure.
Alex Toth-Jones then with the final race win of the season. Robbie Stapleford came home in second place though. Robbie, that was a really hard fought race. We haven't had a chance to speak to you, would you believe, since the second race of the year here at Brands Hatch, which was when you were last on the podium. There's something about this place, isn't it, that just seems to click with you. I can see Robbie is speaking, but he's very, I think I can hear him very faintly in the distance. There we go, that's better.
Yeah, definitely been the hardest race all year. All the drivers are good. It's really tough grid. And yeah, clearly the podium's like given to me at Brands Hatch. So yeah, really good race. Second race, just didn't have the greatest first race, just dropped back too much at the start and just lost positions. And I just had to make my way back up, but got a good reverse grid and then battled with Isaac a bit at the start and then just tried to chase down Alex towards the end, but just didn't get close enough on the last lap to try and fight with him for first. But yeah, well done, Alex, and yeah, good way to end off the season.
Yeah, I mean, you've been a model of consistency all season long, really, which is why you were still in championship contention, despite having not been on the podium for quite a while. And actually holding off Max Goff at the end for second place in the race has earned you third place overall in the championship by just a single point. I mean, that's got to mean quite a lot to you.
Yeah, definitely. All the hard work finally paid off in this, and saying I'm only 14 racing with some of the big boys in proper racing ain't too bad, really.
No, I will say that's an astonishing achievement, really, and a great example of how you don't necessarily have to be winning race after race after race to score really well. What have you learned from competing against some of these real-world professional drivers that you think maybe now will help you in the future through the rest of your sim racing exploits?
I think definitely they just take it a lot more cautious at the start and know where to overtake around the track instead of just going for the move straight away, and just like seeing where they make mistakes and then go for it and then know they make the move straight away. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to take into next races.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad to hear you have taken something away, because it's a rare opportunity that you guys get to race against these drivers. So glad you've enjoyed it. We've really enjoyed watching you, and yeah, not a bad way to bookend the season there with a pair of second places.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I just want to say thanks to Dave Marshall for all the coaching and for setups and everything, and thanks to my mum and dad.
Yes, indeed, and I think Dave's going to be quite a popular driver coach, isn't he, now that he's added the championship to his resume. Well done, Robbie. Congrats on the second.
Yeah, thank you.
Robbie Stapleton then with a second place finish, and the man that was really pushing him hard there at the end, Max Goff. Well, Max, you were another one of our 14 drivers that could have won the championship at the start of the afternoon. We've got you 7th at the end of the season provisionally. Not a bad effort at all, that is it?
Yeah, not too bad at all. I think it was the Silverstone races that really hurt me, but no, it was good today. The start was a little bit messy.
We might have lost Max Goff. Max, are you still with us, or have we lost your connection?
Yeah, still here, I think.
There we go. Yeah, I think you cut off halfway through that, but yeah, it's been a good season for you. Like you say, Silverstone didn't quite go to plan, did it? But I'm sure you, like everyone else, have really learned an awful lot over the course of the season.
Yeah, it's been really good, especially with the Riggs guys. They've been good. It's good to have teammates. I think Rob won the Drivers' Championship, or the Real World Championship, so big congrats to him. I know he was pretty nervous starting from P1, so yeah, he pulled it all together in the end.
Yeah, it's been a good team effort, actually, hasn't it? Have you been able to really lean on your teammates over the course of the season? They're not a bad bunch to be working with, are they?
Yeah, they've been good. There's always kind of been one of us that's been there or thereabouts. I think with the amount of us in the team, there was always one or two that didn't have the weight. So yeah, it's been good, and to have four or five people to bounce the steps off, it's been good season.
Well, we've enjoyed watching you out there, Max. Well done on getting that podium, and as I said, provisionally 7th place in the championship.
Cheers, thank you.
And then, what do you reckon? Shall we have a word with our champion? I think we've given him a few minutes just to compose himself and calm down, because this, Dave Marshall, I'd imagine, quite an exciting moment. You are provisionally the champion of the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with PowerMax Racing, powered by VRRC. How does that sound?
Get in there, Andy. Get in.
You had to work for it though, didn't you?
Blinking heck, I had to work for it. Yeah, this is by far being probably the hardest championship regarding strategy. I've never done a series that's so much like chess. You know, it's all about calculating positions during races, and you know, if I'm honest, I took a fair big gamble there. You know, dropping the points on the overall championship, and luckily managed just to, you know, calculate it right that it gave us the best chance going into the last round, and sure enough, you know, it's my highest scoring round I've had yet. So, you know, like absolutely over the moon here, Andy, because like, you know, you probably know yourself how hard it is to get in a real motorsport. You know, the budgets are eye-wateringly high. So for all it's just a test day, even just getting in a car and hopefully showing what I can do in a real car, you know, it's a chance that, you know, it's a bit of a once in a lifetime, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's no wonder that you're so excited about it. This is genuinely, potentially life-changing stuff, isn't it? I mean, talk to us a bit about that last race, though, because you were in a really difficult position where you had to make some progress in that race. You couldn't have just settled for, you know, a position towards the back of the top 10. You had to do some overtaking, but every overtake you make is a risk, isn't it? All it takes is for the car you're overtaking to have a moment, or for the cars ahead to get involved in contact, and just like happened to Mike Epps, sadly, in that race, it could all be over in an instant. So I'd imagine the nerves were jangling on a few occasions.
Yeah, there was a few sketchy moments, a few on the edge, but it's just picking your battles, you know. Went side by side into the safety car, and I just pipped Jack Keithley, got a nose, and we had a little discussion there on the mic, just saying I thought I was past, but you know, and I've just watched the replay back, and I was just until I backed out. So once we got that position, we had a bit of clear air, but yeah, I mean, we went into the third to last corner, the right hand, I'm sure you'll be able to, before the left. I'm sure you'll be able to tell us what that is, Andy, maybe?
A sheen curve, I believe.
Yeah, so we went up into there, and if I'd kept my foot in, it would have definitely been 4 abreast going into that corner. And it's moments like that you go, you know what, you've got to back out. For all you want that position, you can't risk throwing away a race just for the sake of holding it out. And sure enough, saw David Ward at the inside of the grass, and unfortunately sideswiped Mike, which, you know, if I'm honest, is an absolutely huge shame. You've seen what a talented driver he is on a sim. I'm absolutely gutted for him, really. Like, no one wants to end a championship in that manner. So, you know, unfortunately for that. And also, I've got to shout out to Dan Zelos as well, who unfortunately disconnected in race 2. You know, I've been coaching him for the past, I don't know how many weeks during touring cars, and the rate of progress he's shown on a simulator from jumping from real life into a sim is absolutely outstanding. So, yeah, you know, it's a shame that he disconnected, because I think he would have really shown what he's got in that race too, and you know, I think he could have probably won it.
Yeah, there is every possibility he could have done. I mean, there was every possibility that one of 14 drivers could have won it at the start of the day. So to come out on top of that group, Dave, is a real achievement. I can tell that you're really happy, and so you should be. A massive congratulations from all of us on managing in very dramatic fashion to secure the title.
Cheers for that, Andy, and thanks to David for doing the commentary with you. You know, it's a very professional outfit, this, and it's been a great championship to be part of.
Oh, thank you very much, Dave. Thank you. See, he's not just a quick driver, he's an all-round nice guy as well, and actually half-decent commentator too. So he's the triple threat, is Dave Marshall.
I would scratch that last one off.
Your words, not mine, Dave. Well done on the championship once again, and we look forward to seeing what the future holds for you.
Cheers. Thanks, Andy. Cheers, David.
There you have it then, David. Championship all wrapped up. That was quite exciting, wasn't it? Oh, hang on. I'm sorry. I'm just being told Rob Butler has, yes, he's snuck into the comms box. We had a word with our championship runner-up. Sorry, Rob, I didn't see you lurking in the corner there. But the second place in the overall championship. But more importantly, Rob, you are a real world champion as well. I suppose you'd have liked to have won it outright, but that really was the goal, I guess, wasn't it? Securing that real world title.
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. When you race with guys like Dave Marshall, who you say is a nice guy, he's one of the best humans I know, and he's one hell of an alien on this thing. to be here and to be back. It's just the sim racing stuff has given me a new lease of life and fulfilling my missing hole as a racing driver. So yeah, to be here, to be second in the championship, real world champion. I had to fight today with Everton. I had to pick my fights and carry the weight, and you know, I never stopped believing, although everybody else didn't think it was doable with the weight in this week in testing. I qualified P20, and yeah, I'm sitting here as the real world champion. It's one hell of a day.
and so easily, as I was saying to Dave Marshall just now, it could so easily go wrong out there, couldn't it? I mean, I think that's one of the things that maybe viewers watching at home might struggle to wrap their heads around, just how close to disaster you guys are out there, especially in these reverse grid races, and you were laden with all of that ballast. It gets so chaotic out on circuit, and there just isn't the space for you all. So I'm sure you, like everyone else, had a few heart-in-mouth moments out there that time.
I think my heart was in my mouth from when I woke up this morning, to be honest. You know, going in as championship leader, you know, the goal from the start of the year was to be real world champion. I've raced Dave for 12 months now since I started sim racing, and I know how fast he was, and you know, there's so much on the line out there and yeah, look, I'll never claim to be the best sim racer in the world, but if I can win my class every week, it's most important. But disaster, you're like the slide. It's not like real life where, you know, bumpers deform when somebody touches you. It's like hitting brick on brick, and it just fires you off. So you have to be really, really careful. And yeah, I had a good group of teammates around me that, you know, made sure in race one that I was as protected as I could well be, given where I started. So yeah, it's been amazing. We've the team as well that we set up for this championship, Riggs Esports. We've won our first championship at our first attempt, so incredibly proud of all the guys involved. We wouldn't be here without the help of Jordan, Max G, and Isaac. And a massive thanks to you guys for the commentary, and Rich, FastR, MSL, everybody involved. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Rob. It's been a real pleasure being able to cover all of the action out there. And yeah, just to confirm the point that Rob makes, actually, the Riggs Esports racing team, they claimed the team's championship by a whopping 64 points. I don't think 64 points covered the entire drivers' championship. So a truly dominant display there from the team. And they're on screen now. We're seeing confirmation of that. 342 points for Riggs. 10/10 driver coaching was second on 278. And actually, the MSL Motorsport Consultancy team almost snatched that away from them in the final race of the year. The team's championship just as hard fought as the drivers as well. Right, one more person that we probably should have a chat to, though, I think, and that's Rich Hayden, our series director. Rich, that wasn't half bad, was it?
Well, it lived up to everything that we hoped it would be in the last round, didn't it? I have to say, huge commiserations to Mike Epps. What a way to end a championship. The guy is an absolute gentleman in everything that he does, and he's super fast in a sim and on the track, and to go out the way that he did, I have huge commiserations for him. So I just wanted to say that. And also, you know, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's taken part, all of the drivers. You've made this championship an absolute stormer.
Yeah, absolutely. And our thanks to you as well, because I know you've been extremely busy behind the scenes putting this all together. I mean, it takes a lot to put on a show like this. And I think that, you know, the excitement that we've experienced, not just today, but throughout the whole season, is a real testament to the hard work that you and the rest of the team put in behind the scenes. Just talk us through a little bit of just what makes it such a challenge to put together a championship like this.
Wow, where do you start? I guess there's, you know, the one thing that we try and do at VRRC is trying to bring sim racing into a more professional category. You know, it's been around for quite a few years and has obviously had a huge boost due to you know, all of the lockdowns that's happened. But, you know, one thing that we strive to do is make things as professional and as real as possible, as real as we can make it. And as a result of that, there's just a massive amount of work that goes on in the background. You know, everything from the broadcast. Mike Yao puts in a huge amount of hours to make the drivers and the series look as good as it does. Andy Ringland, the clerk of the course, does a massive amount of work in the background with regards to any judicials that we look at. And then, obviously making sure that everything runs as smoothly as it possibly can do. I can't begin to tell you the amount of work that goes on, and obviously you guys as well, yourself and David, the amount of work that you guys put in to make sure that everybody is taken along on this story of this championship and gets excited about it as the drivers do.
Well, I mean, it's not hard to get excited when it's as close as it is out on circuit. The whole season has just been a real pleasure to watch. Is there one particular highlight for you over the course of the last 8 weeks that really stands out, that you're sort of, when you think of this championship, that'll be your go-to fond memory?
I can't really pick anything in particular apart from how close it's been. It's 14 drivers going into the last 2 races at a chance of winning, and you could see they all desperately wanted that win, the championship win. And unfortunately there was a little bit of contact, and we will look at any protests that come through. But for me, the highlight has got to be how everybody's raced. The drivers have been absolutely fantastic all the way through. So everybody that's competed has been my highlight.
How comfortable is that fence that you're sitting on there, Rick? No, in fairness, I do agree with you. It's just been a series of highlights, hasn't it, really, over the course of the 16 races. But this championship decider for me, definitely something I'll remember fondly for a while. Rich, thank you very much for all of your hard work. Thanks for all of your chats as well throughout the course of the season, and look forward to hearing a lot more from the VRRC in the future.
Thanks very much, guys.
Right then, that is, I think, the last person that we have to talk to, David, and it means that it's almost time for us to go and have a lie down, because that's exactly what I need after that. What an incredible pair of races, what an incredible season, and what a fantastic advert for sim racing.
Absolutely, yes. It ticks every box, doesn't it? The one thing we haven't really touched on is a driver of the day. I suppose it's got to be Dave Marshall, hasn't it? I mean, it's the obvious choice, but he showed how to stay out of trouble and win a championship. Would you go along with that as a thought?
Yes, I think so. The way that he's handled himself over the course of the 2 races tonight as well, under such extreme pressure, to come out on top, I think he's a deserving driver of the day.
There you go then. What a season. I did briefly touch on prizes earlier. The real champion, real world racer champion, in other words, Rob Butler, this is a very long list, bear with me, gets a Riggs SR7 sim chassis, the GTF1 race seat with AccuForce V2 Pro Direct Drive wheel, OBP eSports hydraulic pedals with AOC curved display. He gets a Tank Tools toolkit. He gets a Riggs SR3 sim chassis, GTF1 race seat with a Fanatec CSL Elite wheel, OBP eSports hydraulic pedals, AOC display, 2 tickets thanks to MSL to the Grand Prix ball, and a WT author watch of his choice. The sim champion, the overall champion as well, Dave Marshall, he gets, cop this, a full test in PowerMax Racing's Volkswagen Racing Cup car, a motor drive seat, custom stitched, courtesy of Joyce Design, custom wrapped to the rear, an AccuForce version 2 Pro Direct Drive wheel, a pair of VIP British Touring Car Championship passes, and a 1-hour sim session times 12, so 12 1-hour sessions courtesy of the VRRC. And every full season entry gets a voucher for an hour sim session in the VRRC sim truck. Fingers crossed that's going to be at a British Touring Car Championship round, because when the gates can open to fans, the intention is that VRRC has a presence on site, and not only can real world drivers take advantage of a simulator between sessions, so can you as well. So to Riggs and to all of the other championship sponsors, a big vote of thanks as well, and also thanks to Max Coates, who hasn't just been racing, he's also been busy looking after social media and also getting some of these prizes as well. So we've had a wonderful season, thanks to, as I say, to MSL, FastR, PowerMax Racing and the VRRC. Also thanks to the sim community for welcoming an old dinosaur like me into your world. Real world touring car fans, we'll meet again on the 8th and 9th of May. Thruxton, ITV4's coverage of the British Touring Car Championship kicks into life. And I hear it's very good. In the meantime, from Andy McEwan and from me, David Addison, thanks for your company in a season in which Rob Butler was crowned as the real racer champion, and Dave Marshall, the sim and overall champion at the end of a stunning season in the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with PowerMax Racing, powered by VRRC. Bye-bye.
titan that's rising, oh just you watch. I'm stepping into fate, there is no time to waste. I've got that lightning inside me, this is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. I'm cranking up on the throttle, victory is mine. Show you the harder the battle, harder I fight. I've come too far to quit, step back, I'm going in. I'm cranking up on the throttle, this is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. I've got the lightning inside me, just you watch. This is how legends are made. I'm like a titan that's rising, oh just you watch. This is how legends are made.
Happening between the two of them. The inside of Coates. Marshall gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.